Yeah, thanks. It's really nice to be invited here today, and thanks, Adrian, for the first talk. That was really I learned a few things there as well, which I'm going to take away and have a look at. So it's always good to be learning new stuff, I think. Yeah, so I'm Andy. I work at SoundCloud. Just a quick show of hands, like who's familiar with SoundCloud already? Okay, that's most people. We've got reasonable brand awareness. That's good. Um, so yeah, I'll just give like a bit of an intro to myself, my background, and how I ended up at SoundCloud, and the kind of topics that I'm working on there. And then I'm going to take you through the way that we approach growth at SoundCloud, and using a model which I put together, which helps me think about growth in a holistic manner. But yeah, first of all, like I started out as a developer actually. Actually, I wrote my first video game at the age of 5. My father bought a home computer for us back in, I think, 1982, 1981. So my father was like one of the first generation of computer programmers, and he was very keen to teach me how to program at a young age. So I started early, and I was always super interested in video games. My first game at the age of 5 was not very good, but it kind of got me started on this path, and I was always from that age very fascinated with computers and with technology in general. And I think it's just really interesting to look back at that time, actually, and think about what I would have thought if myself from the future would have come back and told this 5-year-old boy that in the future everyone's going to be carrying around a super powerful computer that has access to millions of games that you can just download at a touch of a button, and that you can talk to all of your friends, no matter where they are, whether they're in their house next to the telephone or if they're out in the countryside, that you can send them a message instantly. You can send them a picture, like directly from your phone. You can listen to music from any artist anywhere in the world, like directly on your device, and you can navigate around the world from A to B, even if you've never been there before. Just to think about like having that amazing device in your pocket, and everyone else has got one too, and that you can communicate with all those people instantly, as well as with a network of computers all around the world. Like, that's science fiction, even just from like 20 years ago. And we're really living in a science fiction universe right now, and I think that gets me really excited to work on stuff like this every day. Where it's you're actually part of this universe that just in a few years ago, like really would have just seemed like absolutely fantastical. So basically, yeah, I started making games. My first job out of university after I studied computer science was working for Nokia, who used to be quite big in the mobile phone space. And I made a game with those guys called Space Impact, which is like a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, which turned out to be quite popular. And that really kind of got me excited about the potential for mobile phones and these new devices, and really kind of got me excited that this was going to be something really disruptive for society. And yeah, so I stayed in mobile games for actually a lot of years, making games and working more on the publishing side. And at some point went to business school, did an MBA, and ended up in Berlin, which is where I came across SoundCloud and started working for SoundCloud. So I've been there about 3 years now, working on various growth topics, on mobile growth, international growth, and yeah, just recently in the last couple of months, we set up a new product team as part of the growth org focused on user retention. So I'll talk a little bit about the first projects we're working on there as well. So a bit about SoundCloud, for those of you who aren't so familiar. It's a platform for creators of music and audio of all types. So that's DJs, podcasters, musicians, singers, songwriters, anyone who's got any music or audio they want to share with the world. We give them a platform to do it. A platform where they can build an audience, promote their music or their audio, and share it easily with the world. And from the listener point of view, it's a platform where you can come and discover music from these creators from anywhere in the world. So it's really the leading audio platform, and something like a YouTube for music is kind of the shorthand. We have like 12 hours of audio uploaded to the platform every minute. We reach around, I think the number we go out with, because we don't talk about specific active user numbers, but our last, I think, published number on reach was 250 million listeners a month. And that's across a bunch of products. I'm going to be talking mostly about mobile today, although not exclusively. So we have native apps on iOS and Android, currently not Windows Phone. But we have an HTML5 mobile web app, which is responsive and kind of works on all the platforms. We also have a desktop website. And we have widgets, which are integrated and can be shared across on blogs and social networks. We also released an Apple Watch app lately. It's kind of an experimental project. Yeah, so talking a little bit about growth. I came up with this thing called the mobile growth stack, which has been shared around a bit lately. It's basically my way of approaching growth in a holistic manner, and I think it's important to consider growth holistically rather than focusing too much on any one specific aspect of it, because there are a lot of interdependencies. The way that you acquire users is likely to have an effect on how well they're going to retain them and the quality of those users. And it's likely to have an effect on the way that you can monetize them down the line. So I think it's really helpful to consider the whole, as well as focusing on building competencies and technologies in specific areas. And that's kind of why I put together this. It's kind of like a cheat sheet for mobile growth marketing. So I'll just explain the structure of it briefly, because there's quite a lot to take in on this slide. Essentially, everything is underpinned by a solid layer of analytics. So I use the term analytics. There's a couple of things in here which are actually a bit more on the qualitative side, like usability testing. But essentially, the idea here is that you should be able to test and measure and have instrumentation around everything that you're doing. If you're not properly tracking what you're doing, then you won't really know whether you've made an improvement or you've actually made something worse. So these are the kind of core competencies that I see as being important in the analytics and insight side of things. And then down the side, we've got three main horizontal rows, which are acquisition, engagement and retention, and monetization. Hopefully they're relatively self-explanatory, and I'll go through the individual boxes in a bit more detail. And then down the side, we've got retargeting and international. I've got those as verticals because I see these as catalysts or competencies which can be applied to all three areas of the stack. So you can do retargeting to boost your acquisition, but you can also do retargeting to drive additional monetization, for example. So it kind of cuts across the stack. And the same with your international efforts. If your app is available in lots of languages and that you're supporting relevant payment methods in a particular country and you're integrated with the right social networks and you're doing the right partnerships in the different geographies that you want to be popular in, it's likely to boost acquisition, engagement, and monetization in those regions. So I see it as something that cuts through the stack. OK, so analytics. Yeah, as I said, I really believe that this is the foundation that should underpin any serious attempt to work on growth. You really need to be measuring stuff. And this is not so much about the tools that you use. I'll highlight some of the tools that we're using at Soundcloud and some of the things we found useful in approaching this stuff. But really, your analytics, when you start out, it could just be a spreadsheet. It could be as simple as that. The main thing is that you're tracking key things, key events, key KPIs, which are going to be important for your business, and that you're keeping a note of how they're changing. Definitely some tools will help you do that. If you're growing successfully, then a spreadsheet's probably not going to cut it for too long. But yeah, anyway, I'll just quickly run through the boxes. Install attribution, which came up, I think, as a question in the previous session. So this is basically understanding where your users are coming from. Are they coming from your paid campaigns? Is it referral traffic? Where are people coming from when they install the app? And which campaigns are working well for you? Which channels are working well? Really crucial to understand that as best you can, and it can be quite tricky on mobile. We use Adjust for install attribution, but there's various other solutions. I know also companies that do it completely in-house. In-app events, so basically tracking what your users are doing within the app, firing events with relevant contextual information about what your users are doing, and if they're clicking on buttons, if they're going to certain screens, you need to track all of that stuff somewhere. Campaign measurement, if you're doing performance marketing and you're buying users, then you want to be able to properly measure and optimize what campaigns, what creatives are working effectively. Screen flows kind of goes along with in-app events, really another way of understanding how users are navigating your product. Are they really spending 80% of their time in the feature that you think is the key part of the app, or are they actually spending it over there in that feature that you haven't touched in like 3 months? So it's useful to understand that stuff. Conversion funnels. Might not be always about converting to payment, but typically there are some actions that you want your users to perform at some point in their lifetime. So it's useful to understand how many users are getting all the way through to performing that action, and where are the drop-off points, and how you can nudge them through that funnel. User testing is a big one. We, at SoundCloud, we have usability labs where we bring in like volunteers off the street and have them like use maybe prototype products or use our apps, and we look very carefully to understand like what are the pain points for them, get their feedback, watch them, like observe people using the apps, and really try to understand like, okay, how do we build a better experience? We also use to test our app store. So we actually just like pay people to go look at the app store and tell us like what they expect from the app from reading our app store description. That's also pretty valuable. User device demographics, so basically trying to understand as best as possible who your users are, what devices they're using, so you can build for your audience. Cohort analysis, we use that extensively, particularly in the retention team. We're generally slicing and dicing cohorts in all sorts of ways. But so a cohort is basically a group of users who share a common property. Typically, it's like on their join date, but you can cohort on all sorts of things. But like most typically, it would be users who signed up in January, for example, and then look at how they perform and what they're doing differently to users who signed up in February, for example, and see if their retention is better or worse. Bug tracking, pretty obvious one. A/B testing. A/B testing is something where we still need to level up a bit at SoundCloud, I'd say, particularly on mobile. We're running quite a lot of A/B tests on the main website, where the tools are a bit more kind of commonplace. A/B testing on mobile, we're building out our internal framework for this stuff, but as of today, we're not running many A/B tests at all on native mobile. So I'd be interested to hear from anyone who's doing that more effectively and what tools they're using. Heat maps or eye tracking to understand like better like how the user is kind of appreciating a page and like where their focus is. App Store analytics is a big one. As Adrian mentioned, I think there's been a lot of action lately from Apple and from Google to sort of open up the app stores a bit and give a bit more insight into what's going on there. But there's still a lot of other tools and services out there that can give you extra insight into what's going on in the app ecosystem as a whole. And we use quite a few of those. I'll highlight a few in a moment. But we spend a lot of time trying to understand the dynamics of the App Store and also how our users and potential users are interacting with our App Store page. And I'll come on to that more in detail in a bit. Sentiment tracking. We track Net Promoter Score within our apps. We have a campaign which fires up after users use the app 3 times, and we ask them how likely would you be to recommend SoundCloud to a friend or colleague. It's the standard NPS question. That gives us a really useful feedback loop. It gives us an idea of like general user sentiment. We also have like a feedback form for people who rate us low to understand what it is that we're messing up on and how we can serve these users better. But critically, that campaign also helps us drive a lot of App Store ratings, because the people that rate us 8, 9, or 10, I think it is, then we send those. We ask them if they would like to go rate us in the App Store, and that's how we drive a very high volume of 5-star ratings in the App Store. It's really valuable to us. So we're actually achieving sentiment tracking and App Store rating boosting all in one campaign. Keyword performance. Here I'm talking mostly around like keywords in the App Store. Could also be like web search keywords. Really understanding how your users are finding you, what they're searching for, what keywords are performing best. The kind of low-level performance analysis stuff, like is your app draining a ton of battery, or eating up a lot of data? SoundCloud eats up a lot of data because it's a music streaming app. We also burn a fair bit of battery. If there's ways that we can decrease our battery consumption or decrease our data usage, we know that our general usage will go up. So it's like even these low-level things have a big impact on your engagement and potentially your growth. And LTV modeling, so understanding what a user is worth to you. That's easier when you're monetizing at a sort of later stage and you have like products that you're selling, and you can say, okay, well, if if a user sticks around for 6 months, then on average they're worth $5. Then that really helps you then to make intelligent decisions on, say, performance marketing. So it's good to get a good handle on that, even at an early stage, even if it's more predictive. So here's some of the tools and services that we use to kind of build out some of that analytics stack. We use Crashlytics for bug tracking, Localytics for in-app event stuff. We're also tracking all of our in-app events in our own data warehouse, which is built on top of Amazon Redshift with Tableau dashboards on top. We use Adjust for attribution tracking. We've used a lot of different tools on the App Store side, but including Mobile Dev HQ, Priori, Sensor Tower, App Annie, Reflection. And we use usertesting.com, even though we have usability labs in-house, which we bring in users every couple of weeks for like usability sessions. Usertesting.com is great for sort of one-off or like snap tests if you just want to quickly get a reading on how users are interacting with your app, or you give them a direction to use a specific feature. You can get like as many videos as you want of real users using your app in typically within an hour or two. You've got some like instant feedback, so I find that really helpful. So that's the kind of basis for what we do a lot of our growth work on, is like having those metrics, having that understanding and that data to give us more user insight that can drive a lot of smarter decisions like further along the stack. I should just point out that the idea of the stack is not that you need to be doing stuff in every one of these sections. It's more a case of like you should be aware of these are the kind of key levers, or at least like some of the main levers for how you can influence these various aspects, so acquisition, engagement, retention, monetization. I'm not saying by any means that every app and every business needs to be doing all of these things or putting equal focus on all of these things. That will be very dependent on your business and your users and your priorities. But I think it's important to at least consider all of these things and then make smart strategic decisions on which ones are going to be most important for you, or which ones you want to build competencies in because you have a hypothesis that they're going to be working well for you. And so it's really just to kind of help you keep that overview. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about, give a couple of examples of specific things we're doing in a couple of these areas for SoundCloud. So App Store optimization being one, cross-sell being another one. Cross-sell is really big for us, actually. We have a website which gets a lot of search traffic and a lot of referral traffic from Facebook and Twitter, places like that. Similarly, on mobile, we get mobile search and referral traffic from social networks, which ends up at our mobile website. But we don't see these as final destinations for the user. We're really trying to drive as much usage as possible to native mobile. And the reason for that is that our analytics tells us that native mobile users are up to like 10x more engaged than they are on mobile web, for example. They're much more likely to be retained. They're going to listen for longer. It's like we know that these users are the most valuable users, so we see a lot of other entry points or touch points with the user as this essentially steps along a funnel to acquiring them as a retained and acquiring and retaining them as a native mobile user. So we do a lot of cross-sell. We're lucky that we have a lot of traffic that allows us to cross-sell effectively. That's not always going to be an option for every business, particularly when they start out. But we do get a lot of traffic to web and mobile web, and we work hard to bring that traffic to native mobile. And for that, we do a lot of A/B testing of our App Store stuff. So now Adrian actually brought up a good example of, like, I think he touched on A/B testing of App Store stuff as well, and he highlighted some tools which you can use. I think it was App Maven, was it? Store Maven, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, and so we didn't use Store Maven. We built our own, and we can drive traffic to it from mobile web. We have like a switch we can flick when we want to send some traffic over to our fake website, fake App Store site, and we want to test some new stuff. We can divert some traffic there, run those experiments, and then divert them back to the main store when we've got a statistically significant result. So what we test is things like the app icon, the app description, the app title, and the screenshots. Screenshots being pretty important, at least in our experience. and the call to action on these screenshots as well. We also localize these call to actions in every major app store that we're in. So yeah, we run a lot of these tests. Sometimes we don't see much difference. Sometimes we see a clear difference. And so we try to kind of internalize those learnings when we're producing the next set of assets. What I would also say is when you're a big company with a brand marketing team, you often also get a bit of interesting interplay between the growth marketers that really want to A/B test the hell out of everything and go with whatever's performing best, and the people that want to keep it more on brand and kind of have an overall style. And I think that's good to have that sort of counterbalance. I think you can maybe go a bit too far with A/B testing and maybe lose a little bit of your brand identity. So I'm glad that we have that counterbalance, at least on a good day. Yeah, just speaking about experiments, Google just literally announced this the other day and just rolled this out. So we're just getting started with this, so I don't have any results to share. But now on Google Play, you can actually do A/B tests directly in the Google Play Store. So you don't really need to build your own fake app store or go with a commercial service. Google are basically opening that up. And I really hope that Apple go the same way, because it's really exciting to see. So cross-promotion, I talked about this a little already. This is an example. Unfortunately, on the screenshot, you don't see the top banner. We actually have a top banner as well. So we have a banner down at the bottom, directing people to the App Store, and similarly a banner up the top. So we're hitting people up in two places on a mobile web, really kind of underlining the fact that whilst we have a very usable experience on mobile web, we actually want people to install the app if they have a compatible device. We're also deep linking on the top banner directly into the app if they have it installed, which, again, I think it came up in the last talk, but yeah, we use Adjust for that. There are other solutions like Branch Metrics, Yozio, that basically will detect if the user has the app installed. If they click the link, then if they do, it'll deep link them directly to this piece of content that they were just consuming directly inside our app. And if they don't, it'll take them to the App Store. So that's great, and that's been performing pretty well for us. Yeah, and we sort of always looking for new places where we can cross-promote the mobile apps to our existing user base, or to very casual users who are maybe just kind of, they would have probably bounced off the site, but we have one chance to kind of grab them, get them to install the app. So this is a great source of traffic for us, and much more cost-effective than spending millions on performance marketing. And similarly, these integrations that we do to drive virality. So we spend a lot of time working on these integrations, working closely with partners like Twitter, like with Facebook, to take advantage of new integration points that they roll out, to make sure that we're as prominently featured in the news feed as possible, to make sure that the experience for the user inside these integrations is great. Basically, what this is allowing users to do is to share music on these social networks in a way that allows new users or potential new users of SoundCloud to experience the content, which is what they're there to listen to at the end of the day. Usually, they can experience the content directly in their news feed, in their other social app. But it gives us also then a chance to upsell to SoundCloud. So we have a Get SoundCloud link there in the Twitter integration. We have various mechanisms for bringing users across into our app. So this allows us to these kind of integrations. I think what we got here is Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, and Pinterest. We're integrated with a few other places like Flipboard, and we'll probably do more of them in the future, particularly on the Messenger side of things. And as we expand internationally, there's probably some interesting new social networks that we need to integrate with. But these drive us a lot of traffic. But at the same time, we're mindful of keeping it to be an open platform and not ruining the experience for users who, if we're too bold on the upsell here, then potentially we might lose that user because we're interrupting their listening experience. So we're always mindful of that too. Partnerships is a place where I think SoundCloud can increase, has a huge opportunity for doing more on the growth side of things. When we look at other companies in the streaming space, a lot of them do carrier deals to fund their drive their international expansion. So for example, how this might work is they'll do a deal with Orange, and maybe Orange users get 6 months free Deezer subscription, or they they get free data if they subscribe to a certain orange plan, for example. And similarly, Guevara did something with Lenovo, who are like quite big on the Android phone side of things now, at least in some developing markets. We're live with T-Mobile in the US with a free data deal. So users of subscribers on T-Mobile in US don't pay for any SoundCloud data streaming. And that's been pretty big for us. I'd like to see us do more of these in the future. But I'd say this is an area where we're kind of a little bit behind the curve. So yeah, relevant partnerships, I think, can be a big driver of growth, because you can get in front of a huge subscriber base, particularly if you partner with a big mobile carrier. So I'll move on to talk a little bit about engagement and retention. I've kind of broken this out now. You could arguably put another layer of the stack in, talking about activation. I've kind of built in activation into this first box, talking about onboarding and UX. And again, the first talk talked a lot about onboarding, so hopefully this will be complementary to that advice. I agreed with a lot of what was said, particularly about this idea of like a golden minute, where you have basically the first interaction the user has, and really the first 60 seconds they have within the app. You really want to get them to a point where they're having a great experience and really help to push them along. And the better you can understand what it is that drives that experience and separates out users who churn from users who are likely to be retained, and then really kind of push those activities in the first session or the first few sessions, the better you are going to be at ultimately retaining that user. So that's going to be a big focus for the retention team at SoundCloud, is to really nail this onboarding flow. So we're working both natively within the app on onboarding stuff, but also with some of the tools we use. We can kind of we can overlay messages like inside the app experience, but we call it like in-app messages. But we can do those from a marketing tool, which is great, because it frees up growth marketers to concentrate on running experiments and working out what are the target groups that we need to interact with, and what is the right time to interact with them, and then A/B test the hell out of exactly what kind of message performs best in helping them to perform a specific action. And we can do all of that without bothering programmers and getting them to build us messaging screens and prompts, which will be unproven at that point and would require development time, design time, and then a submission to the App Store in Apple's case, and then like going through a whole QA cycle. It allows us to really test and iterate really quickly on like really killer campaigns. And I've got an example of one of those in a minute. And then another like really huge box. The reason I've made these two boxes bigger is because they're big topics. Mobile CRM, this whole idea of interacting with the user at the right point, on the right channel, with like smart, targeted, timely, relevant, and personalized messaging. It's a huge topic, and I will go into a couple of examples of like lifecycle marketing there. Deep linking is something that that we're doing at SoundCloud. I think it lends itself really well to content-based apps. Like SoundCloud's got a huge platform full of content, and it can be hard to discover certain content on that platform because there's so much of it. There's 12 hours of audio uploaded every minute. I think something like 100 million tracks on the platform. So the more that we can link users who have an intent to listen to a specific piece of content directly into that content, the better. So deep linking, I think, is fantastic for us, both from within our own ecosystem, like from example, like deep linking from mobile web into a specific piece of content in the native app, but also from search. But I think then you also have some challenges around tracking, like how those users who are arriving from a deep link performing versus those that launch the app natively. Are they staying for like the same length of sessions? Is that important? Like you start to get into those kind of questions, but they're good questions to have. Reactivation, it's usually pretty hard to reactivate a lapsed user or churned user versus engaging a new user the first time in a more constructive way. Again, it kind of comes back to this idea of the golden minute. You have like really one chance to impress a user, and then the barrier to them deinstalling your app and just leaving it behind is so low, you're probably never going to see that user again. But if you've got their email address or you can reach them with a push campaign, you should certainly try. And it might still be more cost effective than acquiring a brand new user. And community. Community's been really big for SoundCloud. Like we kind of take a lot of pride in the fact that we have a really engaged community, and we put a lot of work into that on an organizational level and encouraging that. So a lot of our efforts go into ensuring that the community of creators on the platform has like a safe, constructive, and like great place to express themselves. We work hard to fight spam and kind of the negative aspects of what you have when you start to build a community around your products. And we provide free community support to all of our users. So any user, whether they're free or paid, they can email our community support team. We have community support that works around the clock, co-located in Berlin and San Francisco. So really, it's like 24 hours support. Specific example of a campaign that's worked really well for us, where we've kind of interacted with the user at a certain point in their life cycle. So what we found from our sort of analysis was that the like event, which is like when you like heart a song, it's a song or a piece of audio that you're listening to, that you like it enough that you want to kind of save it for later. This was particularly important on the iOS app. When we relaunched our iOS app, we re-released it as like a bold new design with actually fairly limited functionality at launch. Like we were working hard to add a lot of the functionality back in, but when we relaunched the app, there was no add to playlist functionality. There was no playlist functionality in the app at all. So the only way that users could save tracks to listen to later was by liking them. And that wasn't really clearly expressed, I think, in the onboarding tutorial, as we realized shortly after we'd launched it. So we thought, okay, right, we have a real problem here, but also a great opportunity to try out some new technology and really kind of interact with those users who haven't liked something and try and push them towards liking, which we also see as a key driver of retention. And we see a lot of listening happens on likes. So it's kind of a key driver of engagement. People start to bookmark these tracks that they like, and then they come back and listen to those, typically more than they do listening to brand new music. So it's a really key action that we want to drive. And what you see here on these graphs is basically users who do not execute the like event within a certain period of time. I think we look at the last 3 sessions that they had, something like that. And if they haven't executed the like event, then we hit them with this screen here, which we tested a whole bunch of variants, but basically the same approximate message, which is, hey, like something, do it. And yeah, so this is the results. Basically, this campaign I think was running since December. Served a lot of impressions. We got a lot of clicks on it, and 2.4 million of those users who saw the campaign subsequently liked something. So we got like a real demonstrable value. And this was all executed. This was using in-app messaging and Localytics. So these screenshots are from Localytics, which gives us really nice A/B testing functionality and really nice kind of post-campaign measurement, so we can see actually how it's doing, which is really crucial. If we'd have just built this screen in natively and hoped for the best, it would have actually also been quite hard to measure. Transactional notifications, something that I'm currently working on. As I mentioned, we set up a new retention team specifically to tackle some of these retention and engagement topics. So we're building a new notification service. We actually have one in the that's been kind of chugging away for the last 3 years. And it was built even before I joined SoundCloud, so sort of 3.5, 4 years ago. And it's churning out a lot of notifications. We don't know exactly how many because there's no measurement around it. We do know, however, that it's doing something because when it goes down, some users complain and we see our engagement metrics drop a bit. But that's not really a great basis for iterating on. So we're actually replacing that system with a system that has A/B testing built in, has control groups built in. So there'll be a control group of users who don't receive any notifications, so we can see the real impact as we start to layer new notification types on top and A/B test and optimize them. So in SoundCloud's case, the kind of things which are interesting to users on a transactional level, things like a user has liked their track if they're a creator. A user has reposted something. Maybe 3 of my friends have liked the track, so I get like a social signal. Maybe I would like it too. Maybe a follower, a creator that I'm following has released a new track. Let's say I'm following Skrillex. We want to send 5 million of his followers. He's got 5 million followers. We want to send them all a push notification to say, hey, Skrillex has just put out a new track. Here's a deep link to it, by the way. So they click on that notification. They get brought straight into the app and straight to the Skrillex's new track. So we're still building this service out. Push notifications will be one clear channel there, but we'll also support email and native notifications as well. So yeah, this is kind of a big project, but I think it's something that's been fairly neglected for a while at SoundCloud. So I have big hopes that this one's going to drive a lot of impact. And we're also already seeing that with we've rolled it out to test groups on iOS with the first couple of notification types, and we're seeing some really positive results. So hopefully, if you're a SoundCloud user, you'll be getting hit up with more notifications soon. But along with that comes a lot of responsibility, not to spam people, of course. So along with building this new notification service, another key task in the roadmap is building in more granular notifications preferences. I think an app that does this really well is Pinterest. Another one would be Facebook. If you ever go into your notification settings on either of those apps, you see it's like 2 pages long. Like you can opt in and out of like every different notification type. Like you can argue maybe that's a little bit overkill, but I think it's really helpful to have granular preferences, because then you get a really useful feedback loop. If you add a new notification in a particular class, and suddenly a lot of people start turning that particular class of notification off, that's a much more helpful signal than if they're just turning off their notifications altogether. In fact, if they just turned off their notifications just at the system level, you wouldn't even get that feedback signal. You just sort of slowly start to see them drop out in terms of engagement, and it'd be really hard to understand why. So giving people that feedback loop and giving the user the control over what they want to hear and what they want to be told about is super important. And yeah, and if you can get even smarter on that by doing it predictively and adapting the service based on their behavior and adapting on like how often these notifications get clicked, then I think you're building like a really world-class system. And that's where we want to get to, but we're not there today. Lifecycle communications. I use Pinterest as an example quite a lot because I think they do a lot of things really well on the growth side. So here are a couple of examples of like lifecycle emails. One is like a sort of a digest from Pinterest. I think it's a couple of things it does really well. Personalization. It's like it's addressing somebody by their actual name, and it's proposing content to them which is personalized based on their previous behavior within the app. The kind of topics that they're interested in. It's trying to create like a whole digest of stuff which might bring them back to the app based on what they're interested in. So it's smart and it's personalized. An example from SoundCloud, different type of lifecycle email, where it's more sort of a newsletter for creators. So it's segmented, it's targeted at creators rather than listeners, and it's informing them about new features, which is great. I think it could go like a couple of levels better in terms of personalization, for example. And just a quick note on like volume of email sent. We spoke with some of the growth people from Pinterest, and they told us they're sending around 2 billion emails a month. We're currently sending around 18 million. So we have some catching up to do to get to sort of Pinterest levels of like So we again, that has to come with like smart preferences, so that we're not like sending 2 billion users to the 2 billion emails to users who don't want them. But I think Pinterest has probably got it a lot closer to where we want to be than where we are today. So this is an area where I think we can improve a lot. So it's really about choosing the right channel, the right time, the right audience segment to the right time to interact with that user, to give them a message which is going to help them nudge them into a higher level of engagement, and then making that message smart and targeted and personalized. Okay, finally, monetization. A lot of people ask, what is SoundCloud's business model? So I will answer that question in this section. But just like a bit of info just on monetization in general. I think this generally gets neglected when people think about growth, because it's kind of often gets treated as a separate topic. And in many ways it is, it has a lot of differences. But I think it's really important to think about monetization from the start, even if you're in like a growth phase where you're really just concerned about getting users onto your system right away. I think it's useful to at least be like thinking ahead a little bit, like how are you going to monetize eventually, because every business is here to make money eventually. And choices that you make on the monetization side will like constrain or open up growth opportunities like right the way through the stack. So for example, if you're a paid app, you're not going to get as many downloads as if you're a free app. That's pretty obvious. But like I think what Angry Birds did very smartly, by the way, like Rovio, they released Angry Birds as a paid app on iOS because they rightly judged that iOS users would be more likely to pay for it. And on Android, they chose an ad-supported model. So they were able to get a lot more volume of users on Android and monetize the kind of long tail of people who were clicking on ads. And that worked very well for Rovio. It was a real cash cow. So yeah, often you might choose like more than one monetization method. It could be like a hybrid of like some of these different models. But I think it's useful to understand that choices that you make there will have a definite impact on your growth. Similarly, supporting relevant payment methods and relevant currencies as well. SoundCloud only started accepting payment in American dollars, I think, about 12 months ago, which, given that most of our users are in, or certainly a significant chunk of our users are in the US, that was pretty late in the game to be like, before that we were basically asking them to pay in euros, and they would get a lot of card declines and stuff because American banks don't always accept transactions in euros, or they flag them as suspicious. So sort of thinking about those kind of things, particularly on an international level, really important. I won't touch too much on virtual currency and dynamic pricing, but they can, like, if you can get away with charging different price points for different users, I think Tinder experimented with that recently pretty successfully and made a lot of money with it. Virtual currency, something a lot of games do really well, like this idea of like World of Warcraft Gold or Clash of Clans Gems, and it's disintermediating the thing that the user is buying from the currency that they're using to pay for it. It can often mean that you can play around a lot more with the dynamics of that virtual economy and optimize for like optimal monetization. And then conversion optimization, if you're selling anything at all within your app, then you're going to want to optimize that flow of getting users through the funnel to ultimately buying it. So just some examples here. Clash of Clans, they do really well at monetization. It was top of the grossing chart for like forever on iOS. This is an old screenshot, so I'm not sure if it's still top of the grossing chart, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. What you see down at the bottom right is something called Boleto. If you're wanting to monetize in Brazil, you should definitely take Boleto as a payment method because it's like this coupon system. Like it's like crazy popular there. It's like the main way to pay for stuff, at least for like anything like digital. So it's really like understanding your target market and the kind of payment methods which are going to be most attractive and reduce that barrier to payment. Super important. So a bit about SoundCloud and how we're approaching monetization. In the US, we've rolled out this Premier tier. So actually, first of all, SoundCloud monetizes on the creator side. So creators can upload for up to 3 hours of audio for free, and they can have a platform on SoundCloud and share up to 3 hours of audio with the world for free. Like, and that tier's been there like forever. We always start off as a freemium product, but we have been monetizing also since launch. We have pro accounts for people that want to upload a lot of audio. So if I want to upload like long mixes or like more than 3 hours of audio, then we have two tiers of pro plan, of which I think the most expensive is like €9 a month, and you get unlimited storage. So that's on the creator side. But we also want to help those creators make money. So we're starting to monetize now on the listener side as well, starting in the US. So in the US with certain partners, it's an invite-only program right now. But eventually we want to open it up so that any creator can opt into this program, start monetizing their content, much like YouTube does. I think when you get over a certain number of plays, you can join their monetization program. So we partner with brands such as Squarespace, and we put ads against certain content that's been like opted in by creators who are part of the program. So it's like an ad-funded model, and we will be rolling out a subscription product that will take away those ads, similar to what you might see with Spotify, for example. So that's what I had to say on monetization, and just wanted to talk briefly about the international and retargeting, those vertical columns that kind of cut through the stack. So. Internationalization is a lot more than just localizing your app, but it's a really good place to start. We just rolled out SoundCloud in Brazilian Portuguese, which is our first language where we translated the entire platform. So it's web, mobile web, native apps, everything. Everything now you can access in Brazilian Portuguese. And just to underline the fact that that's impacting like growth in other areas of the stack. Our web signups doubled the moment that we put this live. So they're consistently daily web signups in Brazil, 2x now that we're in Brazilian Portuguese. It's not entirely surprising, but it's a good indicator that this stuff really does make a difference. But yeah, internationalization is a lot more than just translating your app and your app store presence. We actually translated our app store listings a long time before we translated the app. And we've still got the App Store listing in many more languages than we have got the app. So, but we'll catch up. We'll be rolling out a lot more languages over the next months and into next year. And finally, just a little bit on retargeting. We've used retargeting actually exclusively on web so far. We haven't done any mobile retargeting yet. That's reflective of the fact that web is where we're monetizing on the creator side. So retargeting is quite expensive. It basically involves like selecting a bunch of users who you want to go back and hit up with a message on somewhere else on the web or in another app, and go like basically follow them around and stalk them a little bit and hit them up with a message to try to bring them back to complete whatever activity you feel like you've got a chance because they've showed some intent already. So that's the way that we're using it. So we targeted people who'd visited the Pro Plan page but hadn't upgraded or didn't renew their Pro Plan. And by targeting those users specifically on other networks, so Google Display Network and Twitter worked especially well for us, we were able to get a really ROI effective boost to our subscriptions. And it's actually now a key driver of some of our subscription revenue in the US, is to use these retargeting channels. And of course, when you can see that you spend like X on retargeting and you get like a much bigger number back in creator subscriptions, then it's very easy to scale that budget. So again, but you could use this also just like if you had a good feeling that just your average user was likely to be worth something to you at some point in the future, which comes back to the LTV modeling, then you could do retargeting right at the top of the funnel for acquisition. Just people who'd just browsed your site or interacted with a player widget one time. You could retarget them elsewhere and say, hey, come back and join SoundCloud. That's not cost effective for us at the moment, but I can see it being more so in the future. Right, that's about all I wanted to go through in terms of the mobile growth stack. I don't know how I'm doing for time there, but hopefully we have some time for Q&A. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is, how have we got on with Facebook Open Graph versus like explicit sharing in the apps? Is that right? Yeah. So we've done a lot of stuff with Open Graph, and we publish a lot of information still to Open Graph. I think less than we used to. And certainly we've seen, like we saw initially some really great results from that, and definitely it drove us a lot of traffic. Like we published, when people like something, like a track, that gets published to Open Graph. When people played a track, we would publish that to Open Graph. A lot of these sort of lower intent kind of, but shareable actions. And then of course, yeah, we do also have like explicit sharing for people that want to say, hey, listen to this track. Yeah, what we found is that Facebook changed their algorithm very often, and they won't always explain that they're going to do it or how it's going to affect us, but they're constantly also running experiments and optimizations on their end, which are not necessarily in the best interests of SoundCloud or music content in general, or they can make a lot of changes quite unilaterally, which we then see in our metrics. So I guess in broad terms, yes, we've run a lot of experiments with Open Graph, and we continue to do so. I think we've seen diminishing returns over time as Facebook's algorithm has changed, and so we are wary not to be too dependent on it. Yeah, but I can't say what it's going to be like tomorrow, because Facebook might make another algorithm change, and suddenly we might get 3 times as much traffic from Open Graph. So we also try to keep a good dialogue going with Facebook in order to better understand, how we can best leverage their platform. And I encourage that for anyone who can get that direct relationship with Facebook to work with them on that stuff as well. So we find the more we talk with them, the better prepared we are for changes. Yeah. Hey.
First of all, thanks for the great talk.
Thanks.
I'm curious, you were talking about growth. So how do the product teams relate to that? How many developers are there? How are they structured about teams? What kind of things work at Soundcloud?
Okay, great question. So it's about how do we how does growth and product interact, and how do we approach that organizationally? Yeah, it's something I'd say we're still evolving at SoundCloud. We started off trying to do growth as like a purely marketing function, which really doesn't work, because as you've seen, a lot of this stuff does require engineering or product changes, or at least it needs like new analytics or new event tracking happening. And trying to drive that purely from outside of product is a pretty frustrating process. And I've been in that side before, and now I'm actually part of the product team for exactly that reason, because we realized that we could get more done if we embed the growth guys with the product people. So the way that we've organized it now is that we have like growth engineers split between acquisition and retention. That's the way we've broken it out right now. In general, we're also moving to a feature team model within our sort of general product development. So we're still in that transition period right now, but the idea is that every team can touch every part of the product, and they have like all of the development resources and design resources that they need to make changes anywhere through our product stack. So that would be web front end, that could be something on the back end, a new back end service. Good example would be the push notification service that the retention team is building. And it could be also native mobile work as well. So the native mobile teams, we used to have an iOS team and an Android team. They're now being federated out, so we have members of those teams joining other feature teams. So we'll have mobile engineers in the growth teams doing mobile work directly in the growth teams. So it's a little early to tell exactly how that's working so far. It's a really new thing for us, and I think we got there with Android. We've now got the Android developers pretty well federated, but iOS are still kind of working as a product team right now, but that'll change in the next weeks. But I think it's the right approach. Yeah.
And how would you, the same question, what would you advise for smaller teams, like if you have a small startup?
So for a smaller startup, where you maybe don't have so many product teams, the only thing I can say is try to get a product team and like a head of product that really understands growth and understands the value of growth, because some of these things might seem like some of these little tweaks or growth hacks that you make, they might seem kind of like almost a distraction from building this great product that you're trying to build, but actually they can be really critical for like getting you onto a much faster growth trajectory, which is great for getting funding and getting popular and ultimately getting your product used, which is what every product designer wants, every product developer wants at the end of the day, is they want millions of users. So yeah, so I'd say yeah, really it's about adopting that growth mindset. I don't think you necessarily need dedicated growth engineers like that are 100% on growth all the time, but if you can foster that growth mindset within the team and get people thinking about being data-driven and experiment-driven, yeah, then I don't think that you need a growth team. Yeah.
Just to rebound on this one, so before you had the new structure set up with the acquisition team and the retention team,
yeah.
Did you have to fight your way into the sprint planning of the dev teams, or
yes.
how did you negotiate that? Were you always at the bottom of the product backlog? Or,
yeah, I mean it depends on the team and the relationship you have with the product managers and how they how they feel about growth in general, and also like what other pressures are on them from like other areas of the business. And yeah, it becomes like there can be a lot of a lot of diplomacy and a lot of like back and forth to try to get features which you're very excited about and changes you're very confident could drive a lot of growth into the product. And yeah, was pretty tough to have that set up when you're on the outside of product. That's why I'd say I'm really enthusiastic about tools that kind of abstract some of that power to allow growth marketers to do what they do best, which is running experiments, testing, and iterating quickly, and take that out of the main product development loop. You know, put in like an SDK of like something that allows you to do in-app messaging, push messaging, all that kind of stuff, and then let the growth marketers run with it, because then they can move really fast if they don't have to wait 3 months to get something into a sprint cycle. Yeah.
Can you tell us about your analytics stack?
Yeah, I can tell you a little. Let me skip back to this page here. Yeah, do you have a specific question?
About Tableau specifically, maybe. I've never used it, but I know like video companies, millions of users tend to use it. I'm thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tableau really revolutionized things for us when we brought that in. So it came in sort of during the time that I've been at SoundCloud. Sort of in the first days when I joined, we had one analytics product that basically sat on top of a lot of the data collection that we were doing. We weren't doing an awful lot of in-house data collection, so we weren't really logging our own events so much. We were mostly relying on this one analytics product. I won't name it, but it was not the most performant for us, and I think a lot of people like had a lot of difficulty with it. You know, some of that criticism might have been a bit unfair, but really didn't feel like the best choice for mobile particularly, and it wasn't really giving us the kind of level of insight that we felt that we needed on web either. And so as our insight team grew, we also then got some more insight managers and sort of people with like different experience, and one guy came in and decided and suggested that we should try Tableau and putting this on top of our sort of internal data warehouse stuff. And it really revolutionized things for us in terms of being able to create new dashboards and new views and slice and dice things very quickly. You know, if I want a new dashboard or a new graph to look at something in a new way, I can ask our insight team. They can knock it out in Tableau in like less than a day usually. And it's basically like interacting with all of the stuff we have on Redshift. So we basically have a huge data warehouse in Redshift that logs like every single event from like anywhere that's happening anywhere in the system. So it could be a user interacting with our web app, or a mobile user, or an interaction with a piece of content. You know, like a piece of content's getting played. Yeah, and it's been really helpful for us for like slicing and dicing, and you can just cut data like a million ways with it.
Have you used Segment? Have you tried Segment? Or?
I haven't tried Segment. So Segment is like a multiplexing data pipeline, I guess is maybe one way of putting it. Like, so it's like basically you fire all your events to Segment, and then they have integrations with a ton of different analytics products and some marketing automation products too, and you basically you fire your events once to Segment, and then it can like send them to any other product that you want to use based off like one central data schema. Yeah, so you're basically logging all your events once. You can also replay them into new packages. If you want to try out Flurry, for example, you can like replay the stuff through Segment from your last 6 months worth of data. So I've seen it, really appreciate the value in it. I'd like to try it out. It's not something that we have in our stack right now, but it looks pretty cool. There's also a couple of other products in that space which look good. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Let's say you would join or start your startup tomorrow, also mobile.
Mm-hmm.
Would the stack and the analytics look the same, or would you use different tools? Also because of statistical significance, A/B testing, those kind of things. Soundcloud is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're using Soundcloud tonight, and you start your startup tomorrow.
Yeah.
The same deck, the same stack, or?
That's a great question. I think my stack would be more lightweight as a brand new startup, I don't think you need like all of these tools. So the stuff over in the bottom right, all of the app intelligence stuff and app store intelligence stuff, typically that stuff doesn't require SDK integration. So that's something which your business analyst or your CEO can use independently. So I'd probably still use those tools. I doubt I would go straight away for like a Redshift cluster and Tableau. That's kind of a bit more heavyweight. I would go with probably an out-of-the-box analytics package with a free tier. So something like a Mixpanel or there was one I was looking at the other day, but I'm totally blanking on the name. But there are a few good, like fairly lightweight analytics products out there which can do your event tracking and have a free tier. And I think as a brand new startup that just wants to get good quality analytics out of the box, I would probably start there rather than going really heavyweight on this stuff. And yeah, I'm not sure about the crash reporting. I think probably I'd still want some crash reporting in there, particularly in the early days, because yeah.
Maybe one more question.
Hmm?
You're working on a retention team, so I was expecting that you would work with Intercom.io. Do you have any experience with Intercom?
Actually, I don't. I haven't heard of them. Can you tell me what they do?
Yeah, they specifically focus on retention, but also on the messaging and the communication with users. And I think in the Netherlands, we work with a lot of clients that we specifically tell them to work with Intercom.
Mm-hmm.
And we have good experience. I was expecting Intercom on your stack as well, but maybe there's a specific reason.
No. We haven't spoken to them, so yeah. Please make us an intro. Yeah, I mean we're constantly reevaluating this stuff. Like, of course, some of it is a little bit more, like there's a switching cost for any of these things if we would want to switch them out. Like right now, we're pretty happy with our current stack in terms of the marketing automation stuff that it provides. But yeah, I would like to take a look at them. I haven't heard of them.
So just to reflect on that, what's
Yeah.
your mobile CRM tool?
So right now we have like an in-house tool for email, and we use Localytics for push and in-app messaging. And right now we're also using Localytics transactional API to use to deliver our transactional push. We might need to swap that out for like an Amazon SNS or something as we scale up, but they seem to think that they can scale pretty well with that too.
So you just use Localytics for push messaging and transactional messages, or also other stuff?
For transactional push, for like regular drip campaign push, and for in-app messages. So the onboarding campaign that I mentioned here, for example, this is delivered through Localytics.
Yeah, okay, cool. So it's like Intercom's kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, since we're talking about holistic growth here, I would like to zoom out a little bit on the holistic part of growing Soundcloud from a business point of view. How did you experience the balance between generating enough use base to get for a great app and the monetization phase? But you say we started that really early. How did you see the balance between generating the use base and monetizing on that? How did you go with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if anyone didn't hear it, the question is like, how do we balance monetizing from an early stage with trying to grow the user base? I guess the way that was approached, and it actually started before I even joined. So it's like really from the really early days, we had paid accounts and we had some revenue coming in. I'd say the focus has very much been on growing the overall user base above short-term monetization needs. We've been fortunate enough to attract a reasonable amount of investment, so we have some runway to grow the business, and those investors have typically advised us focus, at least in the shorter term, on growing in terms of like overall usage. And when you've got that kind of scale, then you have more options to monetize. So for example, an ad business, you need to be at a certain scale before you can really like generate significant money off ads. So that second phase of monetization on the listener side that I sort of outlined there with the ads and upcoming subscription product, that's come fairly late in our life cycle, sort of 5-6 years down the line. Whereas we started on day one with a freemium product. Now I think the founder's vision was always that there should be always a free tier, and they were very clear on that. So I think that helps to balance that concept of like growth versus monetization. I don't think it needs to be both. I don't think it needs to be a big conflict if you've got a free tier, and as long as that free tier is not too restrictive that people are hitting the limit straight away. Like, I think we increased our limit from 2 hours to 3 hours about a year ago on the free tier. But even 2 hours of audio is quite a lot you can upload. So we're giving quite a lot away for free, essentially, which helps us to grow. I think if we'd have restricted that to like 30 minutes of audio, so people could not upload like a long DJ mix or a full album, I think that would have really inhibited our growth. So I think it was really smart to provide like a lot of storage for free in the early days. 2 hours, it's more than a whole album. I think that was a really nice place to pitch it. So I think that was smart. And I think that helped us to grow. Also, maybe choosing not to monetize on the listener side for a long time as well. Because we're a two-sided marketplace. We need creators on there uploading content. And yeah, we are monetizing on the creator side, and we started there because maybe the creators are getting slightly more value from the platform when they can build a whole career out of it, maybe in some cases. So we maybe felt we could start charging there earlier. Whereas like on the listener side, we wanted to build out a lot more in terms of the ecosystem and have more content on there before we felt that we could start effectively monetizing there, which is why it came later.
And should it be like when what I see is that the difficulties is that when you have the luxury of being venture-backed enough to have that position, what I see is where the difficulty comes in for a lot of platforms is when monetization becomes essential in an early phase of their development.
Yeah.
And you see getting things out of balance with that. How do you fathom that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that can happen for sure. Yeah, and I think that's a tough spot to be in. I don't have any like magic bullet for that, for sure. But I mean, I think I'm trying to think of a good example of like a company that's maybe played that like really smartly. I mean, it's like you do see some nice examples of companies that seem to manage to be like almost profitable from day one, and they sort of seem to have solved that really early on. I guess I'm struggling to come up with specific examples here, but I guess all I can say is like the more that you think about that before it becomes like an urgent issue that's just suddenly imposed on you, then you can maybe start those experiments earlier and find those users who are willing to pay at an earlier stage and introduce those monetization aspects in a way that inhibits your growth less, is perhaps the way to do it. Maybe you get more learnings at an earlier stage.
One more?
I think almost everyone uses Mixpanel, but you choose for analytics.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell me why?
Yeah, I can. We looked actually at a whole bunch of analytics products last time that we did a kind of vendor selection there on mobile analytics specifically. And we talked to Mixpanel. We talked to kind of all of the major players that you'd expect in that space. And we really liked Mixpanel. It was a really nice product, quite honestly. And what it came down to was data protection for us. We're based in Germany. We operate under the Federal Data Protection Act, and we take privacy really seriously. Not just because we respect our users' privacy, which we do. We see that as really key to having a successful community, but also because we're in Germany, we have the toughest data protection law in the world that we have to comply with. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get our lawyers comfortable with working with a US company that wasn't EU safe harbor compliant at that point, and that was still in their growth phase and not really geared up for working with big companies in Germany that had to deal with that kind of privacy regulation overhead. And I'm happy to say that I've kept in touch with Mixpanel over the years, and I'm happy to say that they are now fully compliant, I think, with EU safe harbor, and they're much more geared up to working with European companies and even German companies. So I think they're much today they would be a serious option. Last time we did that vendor selection, they weren't really there yet with the privacy.
Yes? Okay. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thanks.